out. So we got this clip here, and I found this really interesting. So this kind of got added in last minute when I was prepping the video, because I only found it last minute, honestly. And we got some updated statements from Emperor Marcus Rubius, the man himself. And I think it's important that, you know, this gets played through, just because it's very interesting for everything that's going on. Because, you know, as a Canadian, and you guys can certainly weigh in on the chat, from all of the information, the Supreme Mullah of Iran, Emperor Marcus Rubius. But the thing is, with all of these, you know, the Iran operation, the big concern, the big question has always been, like, why exactly did it actually start? Like, why are American soldiers there? Like, why is this operation starting? Like, it hasn't been super clear. There's been a bunch of statements as to, oh, it's happening because of these things. But then if people say, like, is it about regime change? They're like, no, but not specifically about regime change. So I think a lot of people were looking for clarity on, like, the initiating incident. And in this case, it looks like we sort of got that here. So let's get into Emperor Marcus Rubius and new Shah of Iran, and do his statements here.
The United States conducted this operation with a very clear goal in mind. I haven't got a chance to see a lot of reporting.
Okay, first of all, that's the first time playing audio. Is that really loud, guys? Or how is that before we get into it? I don't want that to be... we do have a lot to talk about. But is that, like, very loud?
I don't understand what the confusion is. Let me explain it to you, and I'll do it once again as clearly as possible. Perhaps you'll report it that way. The United States is conducting an operation to eliminate the threat of Iran's short-range ballistic missiles and the threat posed by their Navy, particularly to naval assets. That is what it is focused on doing right now, and it's doing quite successfully. I'll leave it to the Pentagon and the Department of War to discuss the tactics behind that and the progress that's being made. That is the clear objective of this mission. The second question that's been asked is, why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first...
This was the sort of detail everybody was looking for.
Is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact, it bared to be true, because in fact, within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
So he made a bunch of interesting points there all at once. One is where I see a lot of people, you know, having an issue with this online, is basically from this statement, what it sounds like he said is Israel was going to launch an attack. So the attack was happening regardless. So America said, look, if that attack goes live, then we could potentially be at risk because of, you know, if Iran were to respond and go after the bases and do all of that, then America being underprepared from an Israel attack, then obviously that could result in more casualties, and it could be an issue from there. So where the argument from it, you know, from a lot of people saying is, hey, we weren't supposed to be involved with this in the first place. You know, Israel sort of forced America's hand, and now we have to do this based on what they wanted. So that's what a lot of the complaints in theory are coming from. So, hello, there's a lot of people joining now. So there, long story short, I can see why, and again, this clip kind of came towards the end, but I can see why a lot of people would have a issue with America joining just on behalf of that. But here's the complicated thing with these two situations. Multiple things can be true at the same time, and I say that in my videos all the time, which you guys know. And if multiple things are true at the same time, there can be the fact that it's like, man, I do wish that there were not Americans there, at risk, because the biggest concern, and I've always said this because I've like been an anti-intervention guy for over there where all the sand people are, but the area there, I've always been big, like, anti-intervention, because I don't think it's worth risking American lives, in my personal opinion. I think American lives are important, and I think that obviously, that should be the priority of keeping them safe, and it should only be under necessity. However, that being the case, you can also still have a problem with the Iranian, the Iranian theocracy, the regime, the issues that they have there, because I obviously am happy and wanting a regime change, and this is where we're seeing, honestly, the liberals, and has to do with the titling this video and the stuff we're seeing is guys, right now there's a lot of comments about the Canada India stuff. Don't worry, almost a half of this video, probably more, is going to be me talking about the insane announcements coming out of India and Canada, because the Canada India stuff, so some people are commenting like, I'm surprised you still have hope for Canada. After this India stuff, I might be a little black-pilled, because I'm not joking. The Canadian Indian news is absolutely insane. And this actually brings us into the next stuff here with the Canadian. Well, first of all, I'm happy to see that we know that Emperor Marcus Rubius is, alive and well in his next job in the as the Shah of Iran. He's already working hard. He's lining up everything, and I think it's good. He's busy, but he's blending in, and he's making sure he's doing his job as Secretary of State, Emperor Marcus Rubius. I just found that clip there very funny. This is what I also, sort of leveraging into the Canada side of things, and what we're seeing from the polling, and why this is such a complicated situation, is I'm not joking. Coast to coast right now, coast to coast across all of Canada, we have positive celebrations of Iranians and other Canadians cheering USA, USA, like go Trump, that they're so happy with America. They are ecstatic with these new operations that are happening right now in Iran. And like, listen to this clip right here. And does this sound like these people are, and these are Iranians. And again, so I'm not like, it's coast to coast in Canada, all the way on the East Coast, like in small towns, like around Halifax. And like Halifax is obviously a big city in Eastern Canada, but they're from Halifax. I saw Regina, I saw Vancouver, and here all over Ontario. So here's clips from Canada of people cheering on Trump in the US.
U.S. Army, thank you! U.S. Army, thank you! U.S. Army, thank you! U.S. Army, thank you!
Not sure how well you guys could hear that, but they're literally chanting U.S. Army, thank you. So that is in Canada. So you have to assume across a lot of these areas, there are a lot of people who are supporting this. And I think, look, it's complicated. There's so many moving parts, and it makes sense. But, we've got this comment here from Matt Walsh. And I know a lot of people have joined actually recently from the Matt Walsh video that happened. And he pointed this out here, and I found this interesting. He said, the proponents of this war insist that Iran is not Iraq. Fine, but Iran is also not Venezuela. It's foolhardy to think that you can just drop in, take out the top guy, and leave with no problem like we did in that case. Iran isn't Iraq, but it's much closer to Iraq than it is to Venezuela. So I did find that interesting just from the sentiment that we're seeing out there. And you guys can absolutely comment down below on what you're thinking and where this is landing. But I think the hardest part that I think that the liberals are struggling with, and both the liberals, Democrats, so often on this channel, it gets a little confusing because obviously in Canada, there is the specific Liberal Party of Canada, but there's also just liberals who are part of other parties like the NDP, or it may be the Conservatives based on a clip that we have later in this video, because we are going to be getting into the India stuff shortly. But I found this, again, this is Michael Knowles, another Daily Wire guy, I guess. And he's just talking about he's theorizing some of the reason as to why these operations are happening, why it makes sense, some of the camps that people are in. So here is this clip here.
Trump, what I think he's after is not just revenge or even self-protection for the guy who tried to kill him. I don't think it's just about the oil. I don't think it's about freedom for the people in Iran. I think it's in part about that, but I don't think it's only about that. I don't think Trump wants to retreat, as an isolationist. I don't think Trump wants to spread democracy around the world. Here is what I think Trump wants. And the Iran strike gives you this perfectly, or could give you this perfectly if it doesn't spin out of control. Trump wants to reshape the world order in a way that benefits the United States. The American empire has been on decline for 25 years, since 9/11. Maybe even before that. We had this huge peak because of the dot-com bubble and the information technology revolution. But we were socially becoming weaker. And after the Cold War, we kind of squandered the post-war dividend, and we were kind of declining. And then we had the bungle in Iraq and Afghanistan, we started declining. We had the global financial crisis, we're declining more. We had the Obama years were really declining. I mean, this is really bad. Then we had Trump come in the first term and kind of staved it off a little bit. Okay, but then Biden, oh my goodness, we just started plummeting. 3 million illegals coming in a year. People don't speak English anymore. The economy is on the brink. It's just collapsing, right? And then
it's funny that, everything that we see as a problem in Canada can be connected to the same problems that you guys were dealing with when Biden and the Democrats were in power. And it's just so, we can clearly see there's one ideology that is not good. It seems to be driving both countries off a cliff, economically, social cohesion wise, everybody's, general happiness levels, just all sorts of reasons as to why it's hey, maybe those socialist policies and those liberal policies are not really keeping us together. It seems like the Democrats are not helping. And anytime you see these, it's they seem to be on the wrong side of every issue. And that's why I just find it so funny. And again, it's so difficult on the Canadian side. First of all, there's a lot of people, hey, checking in. Hey, Maureen. Hey, Stokely. But you see this happen, and why it's so difficult, again, on the Canadian side, is because we do have the Liberal Party of Canada. So it's confusing to explain when I do say the NDP are also liberal communists, and the Bloc Québécois are also super liberal party. And then obviously some people are saying in the chat here, the Conservatives themselves are also liberal light. Most people don't realize Canada shifted so far left for about 20 years that the amount of conservatives, our conservative party now is Obama era Democrats as far as policy wise, as far as how right leaning they are. It's that's how much it's sort of shifted left in Canada, and why it's such a struggle to really express all of these situations. And what you'll see when we get to all this India stuff in a second and what this means, but here's something that I found very funny, especially from a, not having a Canada black pill situation. It's been hard to not black pill, especially when, so this is Anita Ednand. We've talked about her on the channel before. And so originally they had posted about, the Iranian engagement has started and Canada was not involved, blah, blah, blah. But then it came out, not only was Canada not involved, Canada wasn't even notified. They didn't even let Canada know. So, and she's bragging about it here.
First and foremost, Canada wasn't involved. We weren't notified. And
oh, it's on 2x speed because I have to watch stuff fast because I watch a million videos in a day.
First and foremost, Canada wasn't involved. We weren't notified, and we do not have an intention to be involved in any military strikes or operation. We share the concern of the United States and many other countries relating to Iran.
I love it. So they share the concern. They know there's a problem, but Canada wasn't even notified and not involved. Thank you, Mr. Cranky. That was awesome. I appreciate that. And, you know, the first person to respond is a person who we feature all the time on the channel, Kirk Lubimov. And so you wonder, you know, Canadians weren't involved. We weren't informed. You know, there was nothing that Canada, because a lot of people asked, even when they first started signing in, and they were like, hey, why do you think Canada wasn't involved in the engagement? Canada wasn't invited. Canada wasn't involved because the U.S. said, we're not even going to invite you. We're not even going to tell you that we're going, because Canada has become such a security leak, such an information leak, just like think of a general sieve when it comes to Canada and information. Right now, especially once we get into the India stuff shortly, we have our intelligence agencies saying there is Indian interference in Canadian government, and our government is directly saying that interference is not happening. The Indian government has not done what they're being accused of. We don't agree with the intelligence agencies. So, and they asked them, how did you come up with that information? Oh, well, the Indian government told us they didn't do it. Okay, so we'll just take that at face value. Sure, that makes sense, when it clearly does not make sense. And so you can see the Canadian government can't be trusted, so they weren't invited. Why would you invite? Like, we have a direct information leak to China. We have multiple points of weakness to China in Canada. You don't think if the Canadian government was told that the date of this engagement that China was going to find out, and allegedly the China is obviously not supporting Iran militarily, but allegedly China is supplying a lot of information support to Iran. I don't know. Obviously, we don't have proof of that, but I've been seeing a lot of reports that they are not helping Iran, you know, physically or kinetically, if you want to say, but they are providing a lot of information to them. And so, like, if Canada has become an information leak from, you know, the information we get from the U.S. government, and that could potentially be getting into the hands of the Chinese, evidently, we're not going to get invited, guys. Evidently, Canada is not going to get brought to the table when it comes to these engagements. And that being said, this is such a massive opportunity cost for Canada when it comes to when it comes to the Canadian thriving through this. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of wins here for the U.S. long term, and I think that this was engagement-wise, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. We're going to see when the dust settles what a lot of the reasons for this was probably. But getting into some of the impact on Canada here and what this means and why our liberal government has let us down. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. We got somebody commented that Canada's values are Muslim values, and that is a direct quote from Mark Carney. A direct quote from the Prime Minister of Canada was Canada's values are Muslim values. If he's saying that, chances are he's not going to get invited to the Iran engagement. Probably not. So this video here was a very frustrating watch because, yeah, as a lot of people are saying, they remember that quote, Mallard. Hey, Mallard. These quotes that are coming out of the liberal government, I think a lot of people assume that we make them up. And some of these, you know, times I tell stories, again, I'm going to get into the boomer stuff when we get into the India situation, but this is a perfect example right here. We're going to watch this video. We're going to see how huge of a missed economic opportunity this Iran engagement was for Canada. This could have been a multi-billion, tens, hundreds of billions of dollars economic opportunity if Canada had been prepared, but we've been run into the ground through bad liberal management. But let's get into this clip here. Let me know the audio. I'll check the levels.
Well, joining me now is Colin Meng, economist at McMaster University. Colin, thanks for being here. No, thank you for having me.
We heard the president talk about destroying the Iranian Navy, too, as well. In the Strait of Hormuz that Danielle Smith was talking about, the vital capacity for oil to get out of the Middle East, too, and around to the rest of the world. What are we seeing today in particular for reaction to oil prices, too, in the first few days of the conflict, now that markets are open today?
Yes, I mean, the Strait of Hormuz carries about 20% of the world's oil and 20% of the natural gas as well. And as we've seen Iranian strikes on a variety of targets throughout the Arabian Peninsula, there has been some disruption in the oil markets. We did see about a 5% increase in the lead up to the conflict, just in the expectation that the conflict was going to occur. And since then, we've seen about another 6% increase in the price of oil as well.
And so for producers too, there hasn't been too much disruption yet, but I know that for natural gas as well, in particular in Europe, those, rising very quickly too for now because of those concerns.
So, first of all, Mr. Cranky, thank you again. So, the issue is, for years, the Liberal government has been shutting down natural gas and oil projects across Canada. Allegedly, there's been 17 attempts for major natural gas projects which have been shut down inside of Canada. As we are seeing what's going on in Iran, in Kuwait, in Qatar, in all of these areas, we now know, and I've said it before on the channel, Canada has the ethical duty to be the top producer for oil, the top producer for natural gas, because we have the way to do it the best, as far as the most humane, because they still have basically slave labor over in the Middle East, and they're not following any of the environmental rules that we follow here. And obviously the US is a massive oil producer, and when you look at the partnership you could have between Canada, the US, between the supply of oil and gas, natural and gas globally. And they always talk about look, who's the most reliable trading partners in these situations? Do you think if Canada and the US were able to, the US is crushing Canada when it comes to the LNG production, but in this particular scenario, we can see that there were, we're talking, first of all, welcome to all the new people who popped in. There's 1,500 people in here right now. It looks like that's pretty insane. So pretty awesome. Welcome. But yes, so you look at all the opportunity missed for Canada. This has been the frustrating thing because Canadians are literally struggling, and you can talk to Canadians all across the country. Cost of living's an issue, safety's an issue, and we're going to get into why all of this is going to be connected to both the Conservative Party and what's going on from all of the India announcements coming out of the weekend. But the fact is, we can see this was decades of management that is this missed opportunity. We are losing projects, we're losing hope, and now the best we can get from Mark Carney is 1 gajillion Indians sent to Canada as a result. Hey, look, I'm not going to approve any pipelines, and we're not going to approve any natural gas projects. And sure, we could supply Europe. And obviously, with this Iran engagement, we did see that there was attacks in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar and a bunch of these other places. But, we're going to make sure that, Canada is not able to rebuild and supply for itself. And that's why I say some people freak out. But I always say we have the potential in Canada for a sovereign wealth fund. And especially after these recent engagements, we should have a sovereign wealth fund. But this is when we get into the insane stuff. And this right here, I think I accidentally missed one of the polls, but this right here is information that came in over the weekend. And I don't think that you guys are prepared for the insanity that came out of the weekend. Mark Carney went to India. And the entire trip of India was supposed to be about rebuilding the trade partnership with India. And the entire result is, long story short, he sold out Canada's future. He sold out Canadians. He made Canada a larger security risk to the United States. And yeah, also, guys, if you do like the video, thank you to Robert there. If you do like the video, it'll get shown to more people. It helps to get the stream out there, which is awesome. And we're trying to get the video in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. So, and if you like what we talk about here, you can support it like Mr. Cranky. Thank you. It's funny to do the stuff live that I say in the videos. But the what we had is Carney represented, yeah, Brookfield. There you go, Nelson. So this turned into one of the largest attacks on Canada's sovereignty because we saw Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, create also an additional security risk while selling out Canadians, and the Canadian Pension Fund, which we will get into, all so that he and his buddies in Brookfield could be making money from this. Yes, some people are calling it Crookfield, and Brookfield is going to make insane money from this. Let's get into these announcements. I honestly cannot believe it.
After years of frosty relations, Mark Carney has made up with India.
This is not merely the renewal of a relationship. It is the expansion of a valued partnership.
Next level partnership.
The praise laid on thick by both sides, with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi calling Carney a friend, saying he deserves the entire credit for better relations. Compliments backed up with $5.5 billion in commercial deals, the biggest selling $2.6 billion worth of Saskatchewan uranium to Indian nuclear facilities.
And here's why India is also cooking us in this negotiation. All of the negotiations for the deals and the purchases are MOUs, which are non-binding. They're not legally binding. However, you'll get into this in a second. A lot of these steps that Canada is taking to bring over gajillion, brilliant Indians will be accessible right away, regardless of if the purchasing is being done or not.
All of these agreements under one planet are beginning of a new prosperous relationship that will offer generational opportunities.
Canada and India also signing a new defense dialogue. Deals with a country that just 3 years ago, the Canadian government accused of being involved in the murder of Canadian citizen and Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, an issue the Prime Minister's office would not say if Carney brought up with Modi. Mark Carney has not taken questions from reporters while in India, cancelling a scheduled press conference due to his meetings running long with Modi.
Did you guys hear that? So that's another thing. Throughout this entire India tour, Mark Carney was not taking questions from the press. He was actively canceling all of his press engagements because every single thing he announced was just selling out Canada. It was destroying Canada, making Canada a worse trading partner for the United States. Everything that he did in this deal makes Canada less productive and less strong and more of a risk, and he would not take questions from the press.
Dispatching the Foreign Affairs Minister in his place, who for the first time distanced herself with a senior government official who told reporters before the trip that India was no longer involved in murders, violence, and extortions in Canada.
The words of the senior official are not words that I personally would use.
There you go. Running cover for India. They're specifically running cover for India. Even though our security agencies, so we got the CSIS right here, by the way, again, the CSIS is as close as you can get to Canada's CIA. And I think it's really funny because obviously we've got a ton of American viewers on the channel, and I always do my best to do the translation of like, hey, the RCMP is the equivalent of Canada's FBI. But it's still not even the equivalent of the FBI because we don't really have a good, strong equivalent of the FBI. Like, America just has a lot more agencies and they do a lot better job, with what they're doing. So there you go. Thank you, Mark. That's great. Appreciate that. That's awesome. And so let's get into this. India's basically owning Canada now.
On Monday, CSIS reiterated their position that the Indian government is involved in foreign interference in Canada, something multiple Liberal MPs have also expressed, including the Secretary of State for Combating Crime, posting any suggestions that these threats have been resolved does not reflect the current security reality facing Canada. The International Trade Minister, who represents Brampton, where many Sikh Canadians live, pivoted to the plan for Canada and India to sign a trade deal by year's end.
That flag is like the most accurate flag for Canada's future based on all. Guys, when we get into this India stuff, I think you're going to be very surprised. Or not surprised at all based on Operation Karibam and how these things continue, because Anita Aidnand is also some, Indian diaspora who's been covering for the government and everything that they are doing, and she just is taking this at face value. So when Anita Aidnand is in charge, you got to know we're in trouble.
When asked about Indian interference,
we can have two conversations that happen at the same time. And so this trip is also about economic diversification.
We got Canadian Maninder Sindhu telling us that don't worry, the Indian government is not doing anything to make sure that, Canadians are less safe. The Indian government's not doing anything wrong. Trust me. I'm Maninder Sindhu from Operation Karibam.
Narendra Modi accepted an invitation from Mark Carney to come to Canada. The latest sign that the Prime Minister is willing to look past national security concerns about the Indian government. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, New Delhi.
And we do have tons of coverage here that India is still a main perpetrator of interference, espionage in Canada. India is still a main perpetrator. The other main perpetrator being, China, who we're also trying to do deals with, of interference, espionage in Canada. Guys, what are we doing here? Yeah, it's getting really tough because I think generally you got to go with Canada is getting rocked by Operation Karibam. But when you see all of the China stuff, I just don't know. Like, you got people saying China and China India. I don't know which one to go with. And I think, to be honest, just based on when I leave my house, I think we got to go with Operation Karibam as being one of the larger impacts. So anyways, long story short, let's get into these announcements. Oh, yeah. So here was the Liberals. We got Anita Aidnand and Maninder Sindhu refusing, even though the press, which shout out to the press, they actually decided for once to ask, thank you again, Mr. Cranky, to ask actual questions saying, hey, our security agency is promising, they're guaranteeing that India has been involved in, clandestine actions, espionage, whatever you want to call it, interference. So what do you guys think about that? And they just refused to answer the question. Here we go.
The country's Vancouver consulate supplied information to assist with the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And in fact, Kanwaljit Singh was in fact an agent with India's Raw Intelligence Service. So my question is, we've got 4 Indian citizens on trial for the murder of Mr. Nijjar, but not Mr. Singh.
First of all, you got to be really careful saying his name, because if you make a mistake on Mr. Singh Nijjar's name, Singh Nijjar, you're in trouble.
From the consulate or the Indian government. So we've had the High Commissioner tell us with a straight face yesterday there was never any foreign interference in Canada by India. What is your government doing to hold the Indian government accountable for the murder of Mr. Nijjar?
I am not going to comment on an investigation that is occurring now and a trial that is...
Yeah, the audio is really low. I can't get that to come up. But long story short, they are refusing to answer questions that are coming directly from the press about Singh Nijjar. I got to be very careful with that name, because one slip of the tongue, and you are out of here. But anyways, we've got this awesome information coming from Mark Carney and his media tour in India. So basically, Juno News put this out here, and they said Mark Carney has been highlighting this $2.6 billion uranium deal between India and Camco to boost nuclear and clean energy. And at face value, as a Canadian, you're just begging for a win, because the U.S. keeps stacking wins. We can... There you go. Thanks, Darren, to keep Mr. Cranky. So the U.S. continues to stack wins. The U.S. is showing, and I talk about it, and obviously we talk about it on the channel. when we see the trajectories of the two countries, we can see what's happening in the U.S. on the reindustrialization. We can see what's happening with Canada on the reindustrialization, on the Build Canada. Obviously, the U.S. is winning. And so we're just starving. We're just starving for some sort of a win in Canada. So we see that there's a $2.6 billion uranium deal with India, and you're like, finally, something to celebrate. And then you find out it's a massive conflict of interest that has been happening and been warned about since back summer 2025. So despite conflict of interest rules screening Carney from Westinghouse, 49% owned by Cameco, Cameco lobbied the Prime Minister's office on March 19th, April 2nd, and June 2027. So we have seen almost a year of lobbying from this individual company that has now gotten a $2.6 billion deal that coincidentally has connections to Mark Carney, coincidentally has connections to Brookfield. And you continue to see that, and you'll see that it's so much bigger. Like anytime you talk about Mark Carney and the Brookfield connections and how a lot of people believe, and we're seeing the polls start to finally change a little bit, that Mark Carney is what it seems like. He is on a tour of countries, areas, businesses that benefit Mark Carney and Brookfield almost exclusively. Because when you break down Cameco, turns out that almost all of their tax filing, they do it from the countries that they like do business in, and they don't employ as many Canadians as you would like. Like you look into the actual business there and it's like, oh, okay, so Canada's not actually winning that much by this. So there you go. Lots of comments coming in, and we were warned about this. People have been warning about Mark Carney, how he's basically here to work for himself, destroy Canada, pillage it on the way out. There's a lot of people, some people saying, and I don't know what you guys would think about this, that Mark Carney is running Canada into the ground to basically sell Canada for parts to the U.S. to be the 51st state, guys. Allegedly, there's a theory. It's out there. Mark Carney is running Canada into the ground. He's getting as much personal benefit as possible. Canada will be in such a bad position from his horrible deals. 51st state. 51st state, that's all I'm saying, okay? So it's possible. The chat is flying along, guys. I'm trying to keep up. You guys are having lots of good chats in there. I've seen lots of 51s now. It is a fire sale. So we can now see from Andy here. She said, told you. Originally, she said, Brookfield specializes in pension plan predation. And so long story short, Brookfield has always done a great job at accessing countries' pension plans and being like, oh, hey, we've got this real green initiative that you guys should work with us in. Oh, just give us $100 billion. And somehow, thank you again, Mr. Cranky, for that there. Yes. So looking at this here, and I will say, and I've said this on the channel, and I've seen some other people saying this here, I think what makes sense is Canada not as the 51st state. It makes more sense to have Canada as a territory, because I'm not sure if I would trust Canada with the voting rights based on everything that we're seeing, because people are letting Mark Carney get away with this. And not only letting Mark Carney get away with this, they're cheering this on. So Mark Carney is in India selling out Canada, cheering this on. And now, and this is what I was going to say, I was going to tell the story when I was at the bank today. But before, I want to finish just some of this personal gains from Mark Carney. So remember, Mark Carney is connected directly to Brookfield. His holdings are with Brookfield. He makes money when Brookfield makes money. So the tech capital, we've got this headline here, that billionaire Mukesh Ambani confirms that he's opening Brookfield Geo and Digital Realty data center. Here we go. Awesome. So another big win for Brookfield. And Mark Carney made an unscheduled stop. And a lot of people don't realize this. This stop here with Reliance Industries was an unscheduled stop. Mark Carney went and met with a billionaire, the richest man in India, to talk about deals that Brookfield is getting. So as we've seen that this guy is working with Brookfield, working with Mark Carney, he's meeting with him at his house personally. Surely there's nothing strange going on there. That also, by the way, this guy's son sucks. This guy's son is such a... Okay, I got to calm down. But he sucks. I don't know if you've seen any of his online behavior. I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff that has come out of his son there. And the fact that Mark Carney is meeting with this Indian billionaire family, he is meeting with them, and only one who is winning is Mark Carney and Brookfield, and Canadians continue to struggle. And why this is so important, and why you need to keep this, like, we need to keep his feet to the fire, because not only are we trying to protect Canada here, we're trying to make sure that we can renegotiate with the U.S. And obviously we know that getting a deal done with the U.S. is the most important thing in the world, obviously. Look at this. So we are now seeing that Mark Carney is promising $100 billion to India from the CPP investments. So the Canadian pension plan is about to be sending $100 billion, and yes, this is over a few years, to India. Why? This doesn't make any sense.
Over the longer horizon, the Prime Minister mentioned a moment ago the $100 billion of investments already in India by our pension funds. Those pension funds have $2 trillion in capital. There are already some of the largest foreign investors here, potential for significant growth, particularly given the scale of the infrastructure build in this country.
So there you go. So it sounds like, oh, you know, this is the Canadian Pension Fund. They got access to $2 trillion in assets, and they're going to be investing in the infrastructure of India. But we continue to find out that the investing in the infrastructure of India is actually just bringing over gajillion Indians to Canada. And the only one who's winning again is Brookfield and India. And one thing that I will say, people are finally realizing that India's full industry, their full plan is to get as many young people out of India and into other countries as basically foreign straws to suck the wealth out of those nations and send it back to India, because India has a people problem and a lack of jobs problem. And what happens is when you have too many people and a lack of jobs, it becomes a massive net benefit and hugely economically productive if they remove people from there, and then those people just start sending money back and, you know, and investing in these businesses with the family. I mean, I guess you could say, like, there's an argument that you're sending money back that is not producing, but I don't know. But anyways, getting into the rest of these statements here, because this is supposed to be a partnership deal on investments. This is supposed to be a deal of India investing in Canada. And one of the business lines that they're investing in Canada, let's just say, is not going to be that surprising. So here we go. Now, look at the spin here that we can see. This was clearly all done just to bring over as many as possible through Operation Curry Bomb. It was a reframing. This deal, once again, is just a thank you, Stu, by the way. That was awesome. And this deal was done. And out of the people who I'm some of the most frustrated with, one of them is Pierre Poilievre. Because after every single announcement that we got out of India in the last 24 hours, Pierre has been almost completely silent, not pushing back on any of it. In fact, he did an interview where he said he's going to support the Liberal government moving forward to avoid an election. And the reason he wants to avoid the election is because he knows that right now, for some reason, Canadians would also vote for Mark Carney. So here we are getting into the stuff where we can clearly see all of this was being designed just to bring over as many foreign entrepreneurs as possible.
We've launched the new Canada-India Talent and Innovation Strategy with 13 new partnerships to deepen our ties in education. And this includes collaborations involving McGill, the University of Toronto, University of British Columbia to work across artificial intelligence, health sciences, and digital architecture. We're advancing.
So we are now bringing over, it's the talent exchange, it's the talent program, which basically just means Canada's bringing over bajillion Indians, okay? So we know that this is happening in Canada. We know that Canada is losing jobs. We know that Canada has very little production. We're in a manufacturing recession. We are soon to be, after the next quarterly read, in an official technical recession. And here's where I'm going to talk about the boomer story when I was in the bank today, because I was in the bank. And let's just say it was an international bank, international looking bank. Surprise, surprise in Canada. But I was in the bank. I'm sitting in line in a Canadian bank in Canada. And behind me, I start hearing two boomers start to talk about politics. And it starts to go into Trump. And then these boomers, with everything that was going on in Canada, and again, Canadian boomers, if you are not a liberal boomer, you're fine. We're just talking about the liberal boomers. But these Canadian boomers were in line in the bank, and I can hear them behind me say, oh, that Trump, he's just awful. He's crazy. All he does is try to win for himself. Everything Trump does is to try to make himself more rich and get more power. We are watching Mark Carney actually do that. The leader of Canada is actually doing that right now. Today, this is happening, and they are trying to blame Donald Trump. And then one of the liberal boomers had the audacity to say that Donald Trump is bad for wanting to get voter ID. We have voter ID in Canada as a requirement to vote. In Canada, you have to provide ID. We have voter ID laws across the entire country. And the liberal Canadian boomers said Trump is bad because he's asking for voter ID in Canada. How does that make any sense? How are these people suffering from such levels of TDS that they can think Americans are bad for requiring voter ID when we have those exact laws? But they're just, everything they want is just so anti-Trump, and just like they went on. So I was in that line 45 minutes, almost an hour, whatever it was. And as soon, like they were, and Trump's really trying to get the black vote, but he hates black people. They actually said that. That's an almost direct quote, word for word, which was Trump keeps trying to get the black vote, but he hates black people. And I'm sitting there going like, you just can't make stuff up, but you can't just say whatever you want. That's insane, okay? And this is the level of indoctrination we have on the Canadian side, where these boomers who have a struggling economy, a government, a prime minister who's doing everything he can to enrich himself, and somehow the only thing they can talk about when they're talking about politics was Donald Trump. So the entire conversation was Donald Trump. And I just thought it was so crazy that, yeah, well, there you go. We got Phoenix in the comments. He said, coming from a black American, Trump doesn't hate us. I don't think there's anything in the history of Trump where you could be like, yep, he definitely doesn't like black people. Like that's not been a thing that I've ever seen. But, you know, obviously I've not known Trump his whole life, so I don't know, but I don't think so. When you see that Canada can't focus on its own problems, it continues. Yeah, a lot of people are ending up with CDS, Carney derangement syndrome, but it's needed because the difference is we have to let people know what he's doing, because the Canadians, the mainstream media, nobody calls it out on what's actually going on. So this is another clip of just every single interview, and this will make sense in a second when we start to get into these other clips. Every single speaking engagement that Mark Carney went to in India. This is in India. It's the India-Canada CEO Alliance. Every single one of them involved a mention or a statement about visas, about bringing over more Indians through Operation Karibam to Canada. Here's just another statement.
The enthusiasm and the direction from this partnership, much more will be done. So We're determined to make it easier to do business between our countries. The visa example is one example which we're taking back into Canada to work on.
So he said the visa example is one example of what they're taking back to Canada to work on. If you're curious what he means, India, of all countries, out of all countries, India is the country complaining, saying that Canada has too strict of visas rules and it's hard for Indians to get to Canada. Where do they get off? Where do they get off saying that the Canada has too strict of rules and it's too difficult to get Indians into Canada? Well, maybe we should access some of the stats here. But again, I've got some insane graphs that showing some of the immigration trends in a second. But here we have, in case you guys didn't realize that we are seeing it, we got some new terms that we should be working on. Like, it's Operation Curry Bomb, but it's the Great Indification of Canada, the Great Indification of Canada. And Champion, you got me at number 2 behind Moose. Come on, Champion. In the chat. So upset. But anyways, here's this wow, guys. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for all of the shout-outs as the #1 Canadian YouTuber. I appreciate it. But the here is this interview. And just to show, again, we are finally seeing India admit they have a goal to get as many Indians out of India and into Canada or into the U.S., like we've been talking about recently. There's a lot of videos showing what's going on in Dallas and other areas in Texas. The Indification is a plan of India, but here is the he's like their equivalent of like the Secretary of State, I believe. He's like the High Commissioner, and he's on the Canadian mainstream media saying Canada should have 100 million people. You only have 40 million. Why don't you bring over 60 million Indians?
You have things which we need. We have things which you need. I mean, for example, simple examples. We have, you're a country of, you're the second largest country in the world with a 40 million population, 42 million population. You need at least about 100 million population. You need people, million population, 40.
Did you hear that? We need at least 100 million population. How about this, Dinesh? How about you talk about your own population and stop telling us how many we need to have, Dinesh? I think we got enough.
You need at least about 100 million population. You need people to man many of your resources. We have the capacity, we have the intellect, we have the talent, we have the resources. You have
the capacity, the intellect, and the talent, and, you know, the resources. I don't know, Dinesh. I think some people might call shenanigans. But here is the reason why we need to start, you know, calling this out. Because again, the Canadian government is in India right now, talking to people in India right now, and Canadian businesses saying it's too hard to get Indians to Canada. Well, we do have these charts and these polls flipping finally, and there's a little bit of good news that we have this here. This is the favorability rating of India, and this was a Canadian poll. I was a little bit happy to see this. So overall, would you say you have a favorable or unfavorable view of India? And this is all respondents. They mostly unfavorable and very unfavorable. We got these two columns here. So a total of 57% between the two and view India as unfavorable. So knowing that, for some reason, the Canadian government continues to want to, hey buddy, how doing, Jeff? Wants to continue to pile in more of the foreign entrepreneurs. And this is another clip. We just saw those other ones. This is another clip of Mark Carney bragging and Americans. He even mentions America in this too, as how Canada is getting even more Indians than America. So that's so impressive for Canada. We've got even more than America.
We are one family. The greatest, most enduring strengths between Canada and India are the families who call our nations home. Nearly 2 million Canadians trace their roots to India, including leaders in business, science, culture, and government. Tens of thousands of people travel between our countries every year to visit friends and family. 400,000 400,000 talented Indians study in Canada. That is twice the number in the United States. It is 4 times the number in the United Kingdom.
So we have twice the amount of the United States. Twice the amount of the United States in Canada of Indian international students. The U.S. is 10 times the Canadian population, and Canada has twice as many Indian international students. Do we think that's a problem? Do we think that maybe the numbers don't check out as much as you're bragging about there? I mean, even just saying 4 times the UK is still double our population, and we have 4 times as many as them? What are these statistics? What are these? And when we get to the immigration graphs and the other, actually having India admit this is their plan, come on.
These students, these connections, deepen our ties. And so we're collaborating to build on those strengths. We've launched the new Canada-India Talent and Innovation Strategy with 13 new partnerships to deepen our ties in education. And this includes collaborations involving McGill, the University of Toronto.
If this is the new innovation and talent strategy that you've just launched to get more Indians, remember, we're framing this. This entire program is to get more Indians into Canadian schools, and we're just launching this now? What did we launch before? What have we been operating under? What has been the program and the planning that we've been operating under if we're just launching the new strategic plans now? And most people don't really comprehend how many Indians have come to Canada in such a short amount of time and what that means for the immigration levels. But let's get into some of these charts here. This is from immigrationstats.ca. So right here, and this is why most people always talk about the temporary foreign worker program, and we talk about how many that's bringing over. But another program that needs to get talked about way more often, and I've mentioned it on the channel, is the International Mobility Program. Thank you to the donations there, guys. That's awesome. Thank you, Bandit. And the International Mobility Program, look at this number here. Look at this number here, okay? We brought over almost 1 million Indians. So that's, well, let's not exaggerate too much. We brought over almost 900,000 Indians from January 2021 to September 2025. January 2021 to September 2025, we brought over almost 900,000 foreign entrepreneurs through Operation Currybomb. Now, that's not all of immigration. That's not all of the countries. That's from one country of India. And now our government is in India saying we're going to make it easier to bring over more Indians because it has not been easy enough to bring them over. Okay, well, here we go. It seems like these numbers are pretty wild. But the other thing is, obviously, like, that's not the only, like, countries from that area. It's like we got, like, other people from Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and all that stuff. It's the same thing. But just looking at the staggering difference, so during that time, while we were absorbing all these Ukrainians during all of that, India still smoked them. And by the way, that's just one immigration pathway. And I think when you look at this, we got study permits per origin country per year in which permits became effective, okay? This is not included in the International Mobility Program. Just so people understand, these people from India are in addition to the ones we saw. There might be a little bit of crossover, a little bit of double counting, but the 956, 57. So now I finally can round up and say almost 1 million Indians on top of the almost 900K. So if you're doing a rolling tally, that's almost 1.9 or whatever of the you know, I'm not going to do the exact, guys. We're going to do the calculation at 956,000 and 888,600. Come on, not some kind of robot. But between January 2021 and September 2025, almost 1 million, okay? And if you include countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, all that stuff, it's well over 1 million. And that is just from January 2021 to September 2025, okay? So let's keep that rolling tally. Almost 1.9 million. Let's even call it 1.8 and be generous. Then we have the humanitarian and compassionate work purposes, work permits. Another almost 100,000. Again, 82,000. 82,365. Now we'll finally round up to 1.9 million. And that's just from January 2021 to September 2025. And then we have the asylum claims on top of that. Does anybody notice which country seems to be number one on that by a large amount? And this is just in 2024. This stat is down to 1 year. Asylum claimants in 2024, 32,280. So we've got all of the other numbers that we just talked about that were from 2021 to 2025. This is a single asylum year in 2024, and we got 32,000 from India, 15 from Bangladesh, 13 from Nigeria, 9 from Sri Lanka, and Mexico coming in hot with 8K. Ay, Dios mío. Okay, here's the numbers that we are talking. And I thought it was really important that I bring a lot of these real numbers forward, because I think often, unless you visit Canada and you see how much it's changed, it's hard to actually believe how bad Operation Curry Bomb is in Canada. People think that we exaggerate when we talk about Operation Curry Bomb, and we're like, no, there's not any exaggeration, because these were just people who came in the last, from 2021 to 2025. Yeah, there's people freaking out in the comments about the numbers, because you should. The Crimson Spork, like, the people don't realize, because if you put it in perspective, because America is 10 times Canada's population, we just showed through those immigration pathways alone, almost 2 million people from India through Operation Curry Bomb in 2021 to 2025. It was almost 2 million people. If you do the American numbers, that would be 20 million Indians in 4 years. Something tells me America would not absorb 20 million Indians in 4 years. Like, the idea that this has been normalized, and the idea that the Canadian boomers in the bank were complaining about Trump attacking Canada, that were complaining about the U.S. attack on Canadian sovereignty, when we have numbers like this, it's like, why? Why are you able to ignore this? Why are you able to justify these numbers, which the economy cannot absorb, which the society cannot absorb, but somehow Trump is the problem? And I don't know if it's some sort of cognitive dissonance, but here we have Riley Donovan pointing out that Canadians must be vigilant about any potential migration clause in a free trade deal with India, because we're getting titles of articles now, and people are admitting it. It says, you can't see it, it's cut off on the top there, but it says, Narendra Modi's secret weapon, India's diaspora. Migrants help campaign for the prime minister at home and lobby for the country abroad. And this is happening in the U.S. And the reason why I put this out so often is because, thank you, Bandit, by the way, for that, for the donation. Yeah. There's a bunch of, okay, guys, you guys are crushing it in the comments right now. I've been trying to keep up with the comments because there's a lot of funny comments going on right now. And yes, then Kristen, they do claim asylum. The reason why you have to, like, pay attention to this is because we are every single technique that they've tried and are actively successful in Canada through this clear and obvious industrial scale plan to send as many Indians to other countries to create, you know, like I said, the economic straws to bring it back to their own country. We've seen they've shifted their focus to the U.S. and they're finding ways in. Here is another clip from the India trip. This clip just happened. This clip isn't years old. It is another clip of them meeting together. This is from Wiretap Media. Shout out to them. That this entire negotiation we are going through with India is clearly just about immigration.
I would like to say that the India-Canada talent and innovation strategy is timely and it will be consequential. Its 4 pillars: embedding Canadian capability in Indian priority sectors, translating knowledge and talent into economic outcomes, deepening and rebalancing two-way mobility.
Hey, buddy, how doing? Actually, somebody just said the other day in Americans, this would be so funny. If Americans started playing cricket, everybody knows that Americans generally end up top in the sports. So if Americans started playing cricket and then started to dominate the cricket leagues, that would probably be one of the funniest things of all time. The funniest trolls of all time would just be like Americans just started crushing cricket. However, hey, buddy, how doing? My issue is if America starts dominating cricket, it's going to bring the sport to front and center. It's going to give it too much attention, and I do not want cricket to have attention. But again, we just saw all of these clips of the governments talking about how they can bring over as many Indians as possible to Canada through all of these programs. And here we have Indian agents openly advertising Canadian visas saying, young, old, educated or not, we'll get you into Canada. In Punjab, Canada's reach is code for getting in by any means. 0 upfront fees, thousands collected after approval. And they do these ads here.
Refuse on ਉਹ ਚਾਹੇ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਏਜ ਛੋਟੀ ਹੈ ਵੱਡੀ ਹੈ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸਾਈਨ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਸਾਈਨ ਅਨਪੜ੍ਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਪਾਸਪੋਰਟ ਹੋਵੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਪਹੁੰਚਾ ਦਾਂਗੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਸਿੱਧੀ ਰੀਚ ਕੋਈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ
These are the ads they run. By the way, Kyle, I know that cricket is English, but it's like the top national sport in both India and Pakistan. So, yeah, it was originally English. There were a lot of things that were originally English that have been, somehow taken over through Operation Curry Bomb. One of them being Canada. So, yes, Kyle, I understand that it is. So, relax over there, okay? You're spiraling. But yes, it's a boring sport. I don't want any of it to really actually catch on here in Canada. And one of these sad things that we're seeing is we continue to see cricket, fields or pitches, whatever the heck you want to call those things, continue to develop. But as we know, here's why I refuse to accept the argument that these people were tricked, because that's the argument that all these people make for why they should stay. Well, they were tricked by all of these salespeople. These people are telling you that they're running a scam publicly. If they are publicly saying, we are scamming you into Canada through our scam program, and you sign up, you don't get to say you got tricked, okay? You don't get to say that. There's an age-old saying, I didn't make this up, but there's no such thing as an honest sucker, or there's no such thing as an honest mark. Most of the time, if you're falling for a scam, especially, in particular, if it's a scam that's supposed to make you money or you benefit from, obviously, there are a lot of people who get caught up in scams when they think they're trying to actually help somebody, a little bit different. What was that, Bandit? 95% of us Americans don't even know what or how the sport of cricket works. Honestly, I don't know how it works either. There's just a couple guys hitting sticks, and now at my gym, it's been making me pretty mad because guys are using the track, like they're using the turf to do their stupid little cricket throws. And yeah, the quality leering center, nice. I'm just trying to work out, and they're doing their cricket throws, and it's like, come on, guys. But okay, this is something that I have not seen anybody mention so far about the India deal. Okay, so India is supposed to be bringing over all of this business, all of this investment. Canada is supposed to be diversifying to India so that we can move away from the United States. That's the official stance. The official stance is we are going to diversify, get allegedly a free trade agreement with India so that we can take on the U.S. One of the industries, so, they're bragging about the Prime Minister's office says that there's 10 commercial agreements worth $5.5 billion that have been signed, and the biggest is the Camco uranium deal, which we covered earlier in the video. But there's others. India's buying BC coal. Oh, okay. You know, obviously I have no problem with India buying Canadian coal. It's a good thing. However, they're encouraging Indian companies investing in motels. Motels. So the Indians buying motels in Canada has been one of the largest ways that of fraud, money laundering, quantitative peopling, because the motels in specific have been used as ways to import more of people through Operation Curry Bomb into Canada through the motels. And a lot of people, there's in the States, it's just the same. They call it the Patel Motel or the Patel Hotel because they have captured that industry for multiple reasons. One, I guess they get a bunch of like backdoor funding. Two, it's a great way to kidnap people and, you know, bring them over through trafficking. So they somehow continue to be involved in that too. And that's one of the other things that we see through Operation Curry Bomb is when these people own these motels and they own these hotels, that's where the illicit activity happens. That's where we're seeing the crime. They're encouraging Indian businesses to invest in motels, and they're pretending like this is a way that is going to benefit Canada. The idea that they're saying that is a good thing is insane to me, and that it was included on the list. And we have this video here, and you guys might have seen it. Here are some of the benefits in live and in color of Operation Curry Bomb, and this Operation Curry Bomb, and this is actually from allegedly a truck stop in the United States of America, but we brought over some Canadian talent. So this is a allegedly Canadian trucker who is in the United States of America, okay? Let's get into this.
Look at this. You know, this is a trailer parking. This is not a single truck parking, brother. This is not a single truck parking. Hotel cannot be parked like that.
This is a truck parking.
This is a hotel.
So what happened, if you can't tell, is this truck was parked. It was parked in this lane, and this foreign entrepreneur driving the old big rig managed to hit the parked rig, okay? Then, after he hits the parked rig, he blames the American driver, saying, oh, this is supposed to only be the rigs that have the trailers on it, or the parking for the rigs that have a trailer on it, and then says it's the American driver's fault. So he continues to freak out at the local because he hit a parked truck. The audacity of these people that they can freak out at a local for hitting a parked vehicle is crazy. And there is an American trucker who breaks down what I have said on the channel, what I think is a big issue for what could happen for destroying the trucking industry.
In the bottle, you have to go to the forward. No.
This fucking stupid fuck. Look at this. I'm in my fucking spot. Check this out.
You know, he sounds like he has a Canadian accent when he says, check this out. But, you know, allegedly this happened in the U.S.
Don't waste your time. You hit me.
Nothing has happened to your truck.
Nothing's wrong with my truck, but you hit me.
Get away. Don't care about that. How he's parked, see.
Look at how far you are.
No,
you shouldn't have parked here.
No, Fred, he should not be working at Sing Hortons. He should actually not be here at all. So anyways, this is a response, direct response from a trucker in the U.S., and I think he lays out perfectly what is the issue when you create this level of liability. You know, when you break down the safety, you create these security issues, you know, bringing in all of these foreign entrepreneurs through Operation Curry Bomb. And obviously, I'm not a trucker, but here's a trucker explaining that it's so destructive to the industry. It's so destructive to the countries because of them undercutting wages, making it less safe. Anyways, I'll let him explain.
Because you hit me. No, I didn't hit you.
You were parking and you hit me.
He's saying, I let this again, just from an audacity perspective. He's saying, I never hit you, and his truck is still hitting the vehicle. The truck is in the background, having hit the rig. I never hit you. It's right there, man. What are you talking about?
I said it before and I'll say it again. Trucking died when we brought these people over here. I'm not saying they're bad people. They're just not cut out for trucking. Maybe they are cut out for trucking. They just don't have the proper training. Just think if that guy had a trailer hooked up to him. There are millions of accidents and truck stops every single day, every single night. Probably all 24 hours of the day. And I'd be willing to bet everything I've ever had and ever owned that most of these accidents involve people that are non-English speaking or they're immigrants. I've been driving truck for almost 30 years, and when I started running California in 2000.
Is a powerful drug indeed, Jay. And one of the things worth noting as well, I got to give the Trump administration, or at the very least, some of the state administrations, their shout out here. They have been cracking down on the foreign entrepreneurs who should not be, let's call them the illegals, who should not be driving truck, who don't speak English. And they've already, I think, taken 12,000 or paused around 12,000 licenses. So they're doing actual steps to try and make the road safer. In Canada, we just got the saddest story. There was just another 2 young girls who unfortunately lost their lives in an accident. And it was now coming out that it was a foreign entrepreneur through Operation Currybomb who was driving the rig, and these 2 girls lost their life. It's just these young girls. It was very sad. They were driving a hockey practice, and like, these are the liabilities and the tragic stories we continue to hear, and that got a little bit of news coverage, but they certainly didn't cover the reason that it happened. All they did, well, it's a tragedy, these girls lost their lives, which we all agree, that's what they said. But then we said, well, how do we prevent girls like that from losing their lives? Like, how do we protect the children? How do we make sure that, like, these people aren't able to create this chaos?
Every dock I backed up against in Salinas, anywhere in California, I never seen them people. It was large cars, and everybody that I got out to speak to could speak to me, yet English. Every police officer that I've spoken to has told me that their job has been horrific ever since the influx of immigration in the CDL world. One, because of the language barrier. It's only going to get worse.
I don't know what's going on there. If you can get a police officer to open up with their true opinion, they all say the same thing. If you can get one of them to finally admit, hey, what's causing the problems? Where are these crime rings coming from? Who causes the most accidents? What's going on here? If you can just get them to admit the real situation, I think people would finally see what's actually going on. And then if you do have a conversation with a police officer and you ask them, obviously it's not going to be as similar in the U.S. with Operation Currybomb, depending on the area, I guess. But they can see we have issues being caused that are treatable. And he continues to point out in this video something that I've said is a concern is the trucking industry. If you bring over all of these people to undercut wages, make it less safe in the parking lots, to make it more difficult to deal with. I have a friend who works in logistics, and he tells me all of the nightmares that you have to deal with dealing with these people. Younger Canadians, younger Americans, other people are not going to want to get into trucking as the wages continue to deteriorate, as it becomes a less and less desirable job. And then there is something to be said for trucking jobs, like for the social view of the role, of the career. Like, if it becomes like, oh, you don't want to be a trucker, that's just what the Operation Currybomb does, and they just do a bad job at that and it sucks. Like, there's obviously going to be an impact for the people, and I can only speak for myself, but when I was in high school, there were guys in our high school who were literally excited to become truckers after high school. And they were always talking about their big rig, and they already drove big trucks, and they were going mudding, and they were doing all of this because they just liked the big rigs and the trucks. And they actually wanted to do it. And it was viewed as a strong, career that you could buy a house with, and you could build a good life with, you could take care of your family. And when you see it continue to deteriorate and be treated like a trash career because these people are treating it like trash, less and less people are going to want to do it. So Yeah, it's crazy. Anyways, if you're curious, yes, these people are finding their way into the NHL. So the great Indiaification of Canada and North America continues because nothing yells hockey like a bunch of foreign entrepreneurs banging on some drums at the side of the game, letting us know, hey, buddy, how are you doing? And it's like, look, man, I just want to watch some white guys slap around a puck, maybe lose a couple teeth in the Olympic hockey game, and I just don't need to see those drums banging while we're trying to watch the game. But this is the video here that I thought was very important, both for Americans to understand what's happening with the Canadian federal parties, because here's Pierre, the potential, this is the Pierre who everybody says is Canada's savior. This is the Pierre who, if he was prime minister, allegedly Canada would be cracking down on immigration and doing better economically, and we would be just doing so much better if he had won. And listen, I've said it before, I do think he has good economic ideas, you know, especially compared to what we're seeing with all of the Carney stuff. So let's put this into reference here. Let's kind of put this into a framing. We now know that Mark Carney is in India enriching Brookfield, enriching himself, selling out Canada, trying to increase immigration from India, okay? That's happening right now, on top of everything else, on top of the censorship bills, on top of the cracking down on free speech, on top of everything Mark Carney is doing wrong. He just did the India trip. And here's Pierre saying he's going to align with the Liberal Party so that we can get Kuzma done, because he thinks that's important, which it is. But he's aligning with the Liberal Party, so he's basically not pushing back because he doesn't want an election, because he thinks he will lose the election. He doesn't say that, but it's getting pretty clear that at the federal level, there's not any parties who are actually wanting to fight for Canadians. And I think this is the difference. For some reason, when Trump makes a speech, it feels like he loves America. When Trump makes a speech, it does feel like he actually cares about rebuilding America. It feels like he does believe in making America first. That's what it feels like when Trump talks. Is that going to happen? Only time will tell, but it certainly feels that way. And then you have the federal leaders here. This is Pierre, supposed to be the leader of the opposition, saying he's going to join hands with Mark Carney.
Certain things have changed since then. It has been a year. You're much stronger as of today on your position on this and the way you're detailing it. And I'm just wondering whether you think an election is necessary at this point before the heavy lifting goes on in these negotiations.
I don't. I do think that we should work together as parties. And that's why I've made the offer to Mr. Carney that we would set up an all-party committee that would create a united effort on behalf of the whole country to fight for Canada in the United States and in any other market.
So now we're potentially getting a coalition of all parties in Canada to work together. And yes, I get it that he's saying like, oh, it's for the Kuzma negotiations. By the way, Kuzma USMCA. He's saying that all of the parties can work together. Guys, Canada's falling apart. You know, even if we get Kuzma, if we don't have the social cohesion and the other safety issues and these other things that the Liberals are doing wrong, there's literally no argument for Pierre, who's not in power, and his goal is to fight for Canadians and get into power, when he can see that the Liberals are actively antagonizing, taking on the U.S. They are making a full stance to be anti-American, so wanting to align with those negotiations, wanting to align with the Liberal Party in any way doesn't make sense. And people, well, you know, you should want your leadership to do well. You should want your leadership to do well if it's not Mark Carney riding Canada off a cliff and destroying us so that, guys, Mark Carney didn't live in Canada for a long time. He has a house in New York. He has a house in the UK. He will be gone as soon as he is done pillaging Canada.
I think that being united will be a real force going forward. We have disagreements, but I think all parties agree that we want tariff-free access to the United States. There might be disagreements about how likely it is to achieve them or how to go about it. But on that core fact, there is an agreement. We also agree on the sacrosanct nature of the Canadian sovereignty, that we need to protect our country and its distinctiveness.
So there you go. Pierre doesn't think we need an election because we agree that Canada is going to get tariff-free access to the U.S., which Donald Trump has been pretty clear on. He is not going to give Canada tariff-free access. Canada has to accept some level of tariffs. We don't know what they're going to look like yet, but there is going to be that. And then talking about the sacrosanct sovereignty of Canada made me so mad because I just showed you all of the Operation Currybomb and all of the foreign entrepreneur numbers that we've seen from 2021 to 2025. Pierre was cheering that on. Pierre said in 2023 that it wasn't happening fast enough. He's now getting called out for that behavior. They're now saying, hey, Pierre, weren't you saying that wasn't happening fast enough and we need more immigration, we need more foreign entrepreneurs? And then here he is saying, well, Canada's sovereignty really needs to be fought for, so we got to work with the Liberals, even though the Liberals are saying they want a free trade agreement to bring over as much labor from India as possible, as well as spend $100 billion of the Canadian pension plan and send that money over to India. Pierre, how is that not impacting the sovereignty? How is trying to stand up to America while we bring in unlimited foreign entrepreneurs through Operation Currybomb, as well as sending over $100 billion, standing up for Canada's sovereignty?
The disagreement right now is on getting it done. And my main criticism of Mr. Carney is that in 10 months, he hasn't really done very much. There's been lots of announcements and papers signed and ceremonies held, but not actual results. And I think it would be better for us to see some results for him than to spend $500 million on an election less than a year after the last one.
Oh, yeah, it's just about the money for Pierre. It's not that he would lose. And yes, Bernie, I think you're right. And so many people ask me about it all the time. And I used to say, like, look, I really want Alberta to stay in Canada because I want Canada to stay together and, like, you know, the nation of Canada. Because when I grew up, everybody loved being Canadian. When I grew up, it was like, hey, Canada rules, one of the best countries in the world. Everybody wanted to protect it. And we've just watched them just absolutely tear it to the ground. And then I look at it and I'm like, why would Alberta stay? If I lived in Alberta, which I don't, why would I vote to stay in Canada? Because what are you protecting? And the idea that you're protecting Canada anymore is now you're protecting a free trade agreement with India where we're bringing over more people just to replace Canadians. And it's like, okay, so, and Pierre has actively said that he doesn't stand with Albertans on the separation stuff. Obviously, he's a federal leader. But then he's also, you know, just showing himself that he doesn't seem to really care that much about Canada. And it's like, if you're the federal leader, I don't know, man. Like, you know, and Albertans in the chat, you guys comment down below because anytime I talk to an Albertan, they seem to not like Pierre. And a lot of it is because, one, he doesn't seem very supportive to Alberta. And then two, he just doesn't seem generally that conservative. But, you know, Americans, I'm also curious from at face value, and feel free to comment in the chat. Do you guys see any level of leadership that makes any sense when you watch these videos? Is there anybody who you're like, yeah, I could cheer for that guy? Like, if there were any of these political leaders who are running in America, would you be like, yeah, that guy, you know, I like the cut of his jib. Yeah? I think something he said makes me want to stand up. And there's just nobody. And when I see, you know, that's why it's so frustrating because you watch Trump And he just makes you say, hell yeah, all the time. And you just get so hype thinking like he'll make these announcements. And look, I say it all the time. Trump isn't perfect. No political leader is perfect. There is no political leader who you are going to agree with 100%. However, when you see that Trump loves America and he's objectively one of the funniest politicians of all time, in my personal opinion, you just look at him, you say, hell yeah, and you want to cheer USA in a lot of his stuff. So, I got a lot of comments here. Me for prime minister. No, I don't think I can do that. But, okay, some people saying Jamil Giovanni. Yeah, I can see that. Mallard, not really. No, pretty much. Ha! Nelson, how dare you? Just so you guys know, Nelson said Tim Uppel in the chat. Nelson, you say that again, you're getting banned, bud. I know you're joking. Don't worry. Spencer Gatton, YouTube Tycoon 2026. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, guys, by the way, I am still working towards the YouTube Tycoon title in 2026, as well as I did want to be the ambassador to the U.S. However, I didn't get the job. They gave it to Goldbergstein or whatever his name was from the Century Initiative. Yeah. Do you know who, by the way, I'm going to start talking about him more because I want him to run. Yeah, so Deja, Pierre comes off as fake to you, and I'm not surprised for you to say that because I do, when I have conversations about people, even if people who like want to vote conservative, a lot of them feel like they just don't connect with Pierre. And I don't know why. Like, I don't know what it is, like, specifically, like, a lot of people say that, but there's something where a lot of people feel like, there's just that hard level to connect. Travis is telling me to stop fighting the black pill. Is that DLC for Christ? Thank you. But stop fighting the black pill is very funny. I still am. Okay, hilarious. Spencer for Crown Royal Bootlegger 2026. I am going to fight the black pill for now because here's my secret hope. My secret hope, and this is probably just maybe too much. It could be his voice, Mike. I think there's something about maybe Pierre's voice that has people like thrown off. But my secret hope is Trump has been playing extreme hardball. And once Kuzma USMCA comes, he cuts Canada a break. That's my secret hope. My secret hope is after all of this talk. Oh, there you go. Sparky says that Emperor Marcus Rubius can take over Canada in his spare time. But my secret hope, and I do think it's a non-0% chance, is that Trump realizes, you know what? I'm going to throw those Canadians a bone. Basically, it would be charity. But for charity, he lets Canada survive. And he cuts us a bone on that. So anyways, I thought both the Americans and Canadians would find this funny. Especially because there's a lot of conversation. A lot of you guys comment about how I should, be moving down to the U.S. There was just this Florida law firm put on a move to the USA Expo in Vaughan, Ontario. So Vaughan is just outside of Toronto, which would be probably one of the more liberal areas in Canada. Probably one of the top, maybe Vancouver's number one, Montreal. And it was packed to the rafters with Canadians fed up with the state of Canada, and they are looking to escape the absurdity, and they're going to head down to the U.S. That's how bad things have become in Canada. Things have become so bad in Canada that American law firms and American companies can come up and run expos on moving to the U.S. I guess I'm giving them free promo here. Moving to the U.S., and Canadians lined up. It probably sold out. Whoa, that is a lot of people, actually. I didn't realize that there would be that many people. But Canadians are fed up. They want to move down to the U.S., right? And I think we continue to see that. And it's hard to not black pill, guys. I'm not black pilled yet, though, so I haven't taken it. So Michelle, I do agree he's not perfect, but I think, look, would he do a better job than Carney? Sure. Yeah, I think it's clear. Like, some people are disagreeing with me on the Pierre stuff, and they think Pierre would get Canada booming, and I just don't know if he would. I think maybe he would get Canada booming, like as in he would get out of the way of a lot of projects, which I do think. And I think we would have pipelines approved because it's within the Prime Minister's power to approve the pipelines, especially when we're looking at things for, like the Keystone XL pipeline over the border with the U.S. Like, we need a Prime Minister who's like, doesn't have to be pro-America, but certainly not anti-America. Certainly more like, hey, I like America. I want to get along with them and realize that this partnership is important. And unfortunately, Pierre, when he ran his campaign, was still relatively anti-America when he ran the campaign. And he didn't do enough to sort of separate himself from Carney, and Carney was able to kind of eat his lunch a bit. So, look, if you want to say... Actually, Trainwreck just brought up a good point. Maybe Trainwreck knows Canadian politics better than I do, but he said, you need one that is not pro-China. And that's actually a good point. If we could just get a prime minister in Canada who's not so pro-China, who's not just so open to all of these foreign countries coming over and taking over Canada. Because here's actually the ironic thing. If a prime minister decided to become like hyper patriot, mount up patriots, where I'm going to stand up for Canada and I'm going to fight the U.S., but we are also going to shut down Operation Curry Bomb, all of the foreign entrepreneurs. We are going to create a serious, controlled immigration plan. We are going to build a Canadian national identity. We are going to protect the nation of Canada. And as a result of protecting Canada, it means we're going to have to go against, like, the U.S. economically, and we're going to have to fight to make sure that, we get a better agreement and stand up. Look, that's something that could make sense, because now you're saying, like, look, we're not anti-America, we're pro-Canada. But if you don't have a stance of pro-Canada, then what are you fighting for? What are you standing for, right? Oh, yeah, Britain's definitely dealing with the same problem, just on steroids. Yeah, there's a lot of people saying that, I mean, hey, maybe people like Pierre in some ways, but again, like, yeah, Muslim values are Canadian values, Smitty. We talked about that for sure. My problem with Pierre is the liberal media, the liberal campaigns, and every single, like, liberal institution called Pierre Canada's Trump. They said he has Trumpian politics. They said he is, he's Canada's version of Trump, blah, 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 all that stuff. However, then he was the most left-wing guy ever, and he was getting accused of Trump without the benefits of actually being like Trump, without the benefits of being, a charismatic leader who people want to vote for. And it was like, I've got a secret pick for Prime Minister, guys. A lot of you guys probably don't know his name, but you would know his product. And there was the billionaire Jim Balzilli, who started BlackBerry. If you guys know or remember Blackberries, which you got to remember the Blackberries. Jim Balzilli started BlackBerry, and he is seemingly sort of dipping his toes into politics recently. He's been on a lot of interviews. He's been being brought in as an expert on a lot of panels. And for some reason, there's some part of me that thinks Jim Balzilli is looking at running in Canadian politics. And he, thank you, the girl, Zachary. That's a compliment, but Zachary? Okay. anyways, I wanted to end on this video here because you guys wonder how I don't black pill. It's because I just watch videos like this all the time. So here we have a bunch of ducks walking on hydrangeas in a pond in Japan. And I just thought it was beautiful. Look at these cute little ducks walking on the hydrangeas. And you see look at that. And yes, Mallard, that is exactly why people say Pierre's like Trump. They say conservative means Trump. Meanwhile, Canada's Conservative Party is left of the Democrats, literally. And maybe not left of the you guys got some wild Democrats in the States. Like, I mean, we see what's happening with Mamdani and a bunch of the other, like, even in Virginia. Like, Virginia's going wild right now with the leadership there. And there's a bunch of different, like, states. Like, obviously, California is pretty wild. And you look at it and you go, okay, well, maybe there are some Democrats in the States who are more left-wing than the Canadian Conservatives. That's certainly a thing. But yeah, guys, that's all of my tabs for today. I actually went so much later than I thought I was going to go. I was just trying to, Canadian duckborn. Hey, Peking duck, Brian Lewis, come on. This is Canada, but we can't eat them. I'm just going to respond to the chat for a few more minutes because I like talking to you guys. So if you guys are curious, I do the streams because I've got a lot of new viewers. And we've got a lot of new people joining the channel. First of all, anybody who has become a channel member, Trainwreck, you've been a channel member for a very long time. Thank you. There's a few others, Tracy, and a bunch of the other channel members who've been for a while. I do appreciate when you guys sign up. Anytime you guys buy me a coffee, definitely I appreciate that too. Like, just know I try to respond to like all of that as well. It's just it's hard to keep up to the comments. So when I can, I like to stream, and now we can talk directly. So even though today, part of the reason I wanted to stream is because there was just so many tabs that I wanted to talk about. It was actually huge. I also like when you guys are in the chat. It's awesome. So thank you. Thank you for all this, the support. You guys helped me get to over 50K. Obviously, in the last couple months, we're continuing to support, which I really, really appreciate. This is your first time. There's probably a lot of people whose first time in the stream. I don't do them super often, so we get to appreciate them. Although, sometimes part of me wants to stream more because there's some of these days I have to limit my videos because there's like 5 more stories and clips that I want to put in, and they would be like as long as a stream anyways if I go over all that stuff. Thank you, Sasquatch. I appreciate it. Sasquatch, you've been around for a while too, actually. Brian Lewis, you've been around for a long time. There's actually a Mike. Mike, you've been around for a long time. Mallard, you've definitely been around. Like, all these names I'm seeing in the chat. Like, sorry if I haven't said your name specifically. It's going by kind of quick on my thing. But Bueno Kitty, all of these people. No, sorry, Bueno Kitty. We did not get us stealing the pipeline in Canada. Shout here. Darren, the stream virgin. Well, welcome. Yeah. You guys always like when I make the videos when I get heated, and those do happen. Every once in a while, a day will go by and I'll just see some of the worst news possible. And I get so jealous because I'll see, like, I'll watch American, like, because I do watch fully all the American news. I'm on like American Twitter. I'm doing all of that to like see what's going on over there. And like, so much of it is wins for America. And then I'll go on the Canadian side and it's just Canada getting smoked. Other brothers sing committing crimes. Operation Curry Bomb heating up. Just horrible announcement from the Liberal government. And I will just get so black-pilled on that day, not permanently. And I just have to do a video where I'm just so heated and I'm screaming. And I will say, and maybe you guys noticed, like, sometimes when I do those really heated videos, it's actually fun because I get to sort of like really get it off my chest and like really scream and get going. And it's like that sense of catharsis knowing like, all right, boys, we got to yell today. Okay, well, yeah, there's a lot of people. And do you know what I found the most interesting? Oh, I'd love to be governor of California. And hey, they might even trust me. They might even vote for me in California because they're like, hey, he's Canadian. He must be a liberal guy. So let's vote in Spencer. And then I'd be like, joke's on you. I'm more right wing than most people you probably met. So, yeah, Mike, don't black pill, Mike. We're hanging in. You keep doing that. Thanks for saying that, Greg. I'm glad you have fun. I don't post anything on Twitter, Mallard. I just have a 100% research account. I don't post ever. I don't even have, like, it's not even branded with my name. It's still got the like nonsense numbers you get that auto generate when you create an account. When I make an account, I'll shout it out on the channel because I've been talking about like making a Twitter because it's hard to not respond to a lot of the tweets that I see and the posts that I share in the videos. Thank you, Deja. I appreciate you appreciating that. And yeah, like, so the way that I've always tried to do this, and hopefully you guys get this vibe from the channel, and this is why we're talking about it now, but like the politics can be pretty heavy and pretty frustrating, and that's why like sometimes it builds up when I just gotta scream. But if you can't tell, my personality is to try to make things funny. My personality is to try to bring jokes to the table. And so my goal is almost always like, okay, these conversations I have in the videos, and this is why I engage with you guys so much in the comments, because the things that I talk about in the videos is the things I would talk about with my friends. And when I'm talking with my friends, I'd obviously be joking around with my friends. So why would I not just do the same thing in my videos? Like make the jokes, have fun, enjoy it. And these are things that I like to do. So I think it just makes sense to keep the videos fun, right? Greg, did you ask why I don't have a Canadian accent? What? Americans, do you think? Americans, do I sound like I have a Canadian accent? Yeah, what do you guys think accent wise? It's probably just on words like out and about, right? Greg said I sound normal. That's really funny, actually. Yeah, I guess my Canadian accent's just pretty mild. I am from Ontario, and depending on where you're from in Ontario, you can sound pretty American. And that's why I always love, like, you know, people who say, like, we're not Americans at all. We just sound very similar to them. We just consume all American media. We just watch American movies. And when you calculate the domestic box offices, you know, the Canada-U.S. box office is considered domestic. You know, our politicians, you know, have been working together for generations, all this stuff. Like, there's all these connections between Canada and the U.S., swapping of populations. The history's connected. But, like, we're not American. We only talk the exact same. Yeah, I do say, if you have a conversation with me in person, I do say A all the time. And I didn't realize I said A all the time until I traveled. And then people were like, Canadians actually say A? And I was like, yeah, okay. Brian, I'm not too far from the Michigan border, so maybe that's why I sound like I'm from Michigan. Yeah, I only sound Canadian when I do it purposely. The problem is, anytime I do, like, because obviously I do a lot of accents on the channel. And anytime I do my Canadian accent, it just involves me doing a lot of swearing. Because in the town I grew up in, it's kind of how people talked. I was over the bucket all night. I was over the bucket all night is how I would say that. I don't know. Is that Canadian? Bandit loves the China pipeline screaming. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll have to pick up a Chinese accent. See, Deja, I think I could run in California because I think I would just trick them. I would just tell them, I'm like, look, I'm Canadian. Vote for me. I'm super liberal. I'm a Canadian guy. You know, I'll give you free everything. We're Canadian. We get free everything up here. And then I get in, and they brought me. It's like inviting the vampire in. Like, it turns out it's the most right-wing leader California's ever had. So there you go. Hey, buddy, how doing? You know, Mouse, I think so. And we're gonna start with a little Canada lore or Spencer lore. So I like my main sport growing up. I actually preferred playing football to hockey. So I played hockey. Like, I'm Canadian, so you know, when you grow up, everybody's fucking playing hockey, boys. But I played hockey growing up for sure, but then as soon as I got to high school, I cared way more about football, and so I played American football. It's, you know, we have Canadian rules up here, but originally when I was going to university, the big reason that I do have an accent, thanks, Bandit, but the reason I was even going to go to college in the first place was just to play football. But again, not to oversell my skills as a football player, I was playing Canadian college football is where I was going, not American college football. There's a little bit of a gap when it comes to the two footballs. Nice. Ironically, I did hurt my knee in first year college. Carney actually did play hockey. He played hockey at Harvard. He played for Harvard's hockey team. Because Big C asked, did Carney ever play any sports? And he did. He played for Harvard, allegedly. He was a goalie. Brandon said I'm white, so that I was never going to go anywhere in football. You know, okay. It's true, possibly, but Phoenix, you're from Tennessee, and you don't hear an accent. Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't sound like I'm from Tennessee, that's for sure. So I think if I went down, people would just assume, like, yeah, I'm from Michigan or one of the other, maybe. So I don't think, like, I guess it depends. He does skate on his ankles, Mike, but I think he just had bad skates. Sparky can hear the accent. Sound like I'm from the Midwest. Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think when you wait, no kidding. I think most of the Midwest, and I think when you look at like Minnesota or like, yeah, other Wisconsin, maybe you start to, and even Illinois, like people from Illinois, well, first of all, not Chicago. Not Chicago. People in Chicago have a different accent than I do. But yeah, I think a lot of the states, of the northern states, ironically, where I am is actually like more south than some of the northern states. So there you go. I've never been to Cedar Point, but familiar with it for sure. American in Mexico. Shout out to Mouse. Hello. Tennessee is the core of freedom. And then Americans, I'm open to suggestions, especially when people keep saying to move down there. So I actually spent 2 weeks. The only sport I was ever good at was beer drinking. I don't know. Yeah, I guess. Not going to tell those stories. I spent 2 weeks down in Nashville. And I was looking at housing down in Nashville, and it was a place that I had seriously considered moving to. Yeah, Canada has a lot of good pizza. I mean, Canada, for what it's worth, as much as Canada can suck we obviously have a lot of good food here. There's a lot of people. And I'm not saying that's an argument for unlimited foreign entrepreneurs. I'm just saying we do have good food here. But yeah, I looked at moving down to Nashville. It seemed like a great spot. But when I was looking at moving to Nashville, aka Nash Vegas, at that time is exactly when everybody from California and other states were like flooding to Nashville, and then it was like switching, and it started to get way more expensive for one, and then it started to change. Like, you know, you were seeing like people were complaining about all of the Republicans in Nashville, like, and I was like, well, you're going to Tennessee, like, what are you talking about? Yeah, moving to Alberta is always like an option, but like the problem is with moving to Alberta is Alberta better than Ontario? Yes. Alberta is definitely better than Ontario, and I'm in Ontario. However, oh, thank you, Bueno Kitty. That's awesome. But however, okay, we got a bunch of gifted members now. That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I actually visited Knoxville when I was down there too. Just briefly. Not Knox Vegas instead of Nash Vegas. But yeah, the Nashville was very liberal once I was down there. But the thing is, yeah, so we're seeing some Texas flags in there. What do you guys think? Like, my nightmare, okay? If I move down to Texas and I see Operation Curry Bomb, if I move all the way out of Canada and I jump through all of the hoops to get down to the US legally, which is a lot if I'm not going down on like a specific career, a specific job, and I end up in Texas surrounded by Operation Curry Bomb, I would lose it. Talk about blackpilling. If I have not blackpilled in Canada, but I move down to Texas and it's there, oh, I would be blackpilling. Let me tell you that. Awesome. We have a lot of Florida viewers on the channel. Thanks again, Bueno Kitty. That was really awesome. So if you guys don't know, Bueno Kitty gifted a bunch of subs to people, so now they're technically, you know, paid subscribers to the channel, and that was really nice. Florida's on the list because there's a bunch of areas that are not, like, obviously, you know, moving down to Florida just to be in Miami seems like not the best because it'd be like the most expensive, and, you know, obviously pretty democratic city there too in a lot of ways because a lot of the Californians and other people move there too. But, oh, Don from Cali, there you go. You know what? I think a lot of people, including Americans, are surprised how many Republicans or right-leaning Californians there are. Oh, the problem with Michigan, Greg, is it's just, again, it's not as much of a change. Like, Michigan for me is literally right across the border. Like I can get to Michigan quickly, but there's only so much of a benefit. If I'm going to uproot my life, like get away from family, move to another area, it's like I want to make sure that I'm moving to an area where I can fit in, set down roots, build a family. Like, ideally, still got to find a girlfriend, have lots of kids. Stay in the upper half of Florida. Isn't that where Jacksonville is? And I thought Jacksonville's not stellar. Even though guys, I don't want to cause a drama here, but technically I am a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. Move to Saskatchewan. There you go. That would be a bit tough. Actually, Oklahoma, Brandon said to move to Oklahoma. I was looking at Oklahoma City as well, because it was one of the, if you want to call it like B tier cities, but it still had like 1 million people. or whatever it was, and it seemed like housing was still very affordable. And it seemed like overall a pretty good city to move to. I mean, you just have to deal with some tornadoes, but honestly, it worked out pretty well in the Wizard of Oz. So yeah, Jacksonville, I think, would be kind of boring for me to move to. Yeah, tornadoes in Oklahoma. There you go, Trainwreck, confirming. Patriot, I don't know what you're reacting to. When you said what the hell there. So I agree, Chasing Zero, because Chasing Zero said that Canada needs like good men to stay and help change Canada. And I do agree. That's another reason why. Thank you, Mike. That's awesome. I appreciate that a lot, but you also support from watching my videos and liking and sharing and doing that every day. But the issue with me leaving Canada is my family has been in Canada since 1860. And I would feel like, oh yeah, Charlotte, the Carolinas both look good, but honestly, the Carolinas are on the list too. The issue is I'd feel like such a weak loss by leaving Canada just because we've let these liberal losers take over the government and like run Canada into the ground in 10 years and just destroy everything. And it's like, oh, well, we got to give up now and I got to leave Canada. And it's like so frustrating to think of that. Like my family came in 1860. They moved to Stratford, Ontario. If you guys know where it is, actually Stratford's got a pretty big theater scene, so you might know where it is. They moved to Stratford, Ontario. That's not where I grew up, but that is where my family moved to. And they built the newspaper there. They did a bunch of stuff like, and the idea that leaving now, even though part of me still like views the U.S. like I do think Canada and the U.S. have such a unique relationship where part of me, and Americans feel free to call me out, but part of me has always felt just a little bit American. Even though I'm not American, so I can't claim to be, the part of me is always been like, because in Canada, I'm not joking, when the American elections happen, the 24-hour news cycle in Canada is just the election for the US. It's literally the 24-hour news cycle is just live streams of Canadian media talking about the American elections. It feels like it's our elections. Like literally the American elections feel like Canada's elections. Like that's what it actually does feel like. Yeah, actually, that's Bathtubs says I should move to LA, which is the same thing that we were joking about with Deja, is I could be the Canadian secret agent. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to be secret agent Canadian. When I go down to the US, all of them will just assume I hate Trump and I would be a Democrat. And then I infiltrate all of the institutions. That's what we're going to do. My dad's in the chat. Everybody say hi, Chris. He said he's been on the same channel and alignment with me. So there you go, guys. I guess I take after my dad. So shout out to my dad. And then you can also say happy birthday to my mom. It was her birthday a few days ago. So you can say happy birthday to her. Her name's Allison. Yeah, my dad needed to check up, make sure I wasn't spiraling. Yeah, and some people are saying we live in North America, because I wanted to talk about this in other videos, but you guys know that there's been massive population swaps between Canada and the US. Like the Acadians who went down and like helped build Louisiana, and just a ton of French Canadians who had literally, settled in Canada, moved over. There was over 1 million French Canadians. We talked about it briefly in one of the things. Over 1 million French Canadians went down to the U.S. because while the U.S. and Canada were being settled, and we're talking hundreds of years ago, there wasn't as specific as of a border. Like, that didn't happen right away. Like, these things were settled over time. So there was all these swapping of populations. And I love the mom, if you're hearing this, there's a bunch of happy birthdays in the chats for you. So thank you to everybody who's saying happy birthday. So the thing that's really cool, again, about the Canadian history, and thing that I found really funny is, do you guys know, and this is like, I'm really, really paraphrasing the story. There's obviously a bit more details to this, but a lot of Americans don't know how British Columbia became British Columbia and why it's called British Columbia so specifically. Oh, someone just donated for my mom's birthday. I guess I got to send that to her. So yes, a bunch of the French Canadians got kicked out of New Brunswick by the British, and then they ended up down in the United States, and they became Americans, and that's why there's French in America, a lot of it anyways. So British Columbia, before it was called British Columbia, was becoming a pretty specific mining colony, and the land was obviously prosperous, and it was a super desirable patch of land. And what was happening is the Americans from California, and maybe this says a lot as to why British Columbia and Vancouver ended up how it is. A lot of the Americans went up from California to what is now British Columbia because they were trying to set up the gold industry there, and they were setting up all the mining industry. And there was tens of thousands of Americans, and which back then it would have been a huge population, but tens of thousands of Americans who went up to what is now British Columbia. And the British were like, oh no, we're going to lose this land to the Americans. So they literally were scared that British Columbia at the time was going to get taken over by the US. So they literally stamped it like British Columbia, British Columbia. Like, this is such a British spot in a nation. Like, you have to know this is British land. Boom, British Columbia. And then they specifically called it British Columbia because they were scared America was going to take it. Like, that's how roving this border has been this entire time. Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, no. Well, if you look, yeah, Americans and Canadians are related for sure. Like, it's just like it's almost the most, outside of like maybe like the Eastern European areas where it's like they've swapped populations a lot too. I do think Bueno Kitty, this channel does history too. It's not just screaming at the clouds. Good point. Yeah, the only reason British Columbia is such a liberal province and why they continue to be liberal is because of Vancouver just has a bunch of seats. Yeah, the border is silly having Alaska on one side, and then it's just like, I do, and that's why, look, I think there is a world where Canada and the US are quite connected. Yeah, well, and again, like, this is in answering Phoenix in the chat here. The anti-American propaganda in Canada. Actually, I'm going to show you one last clip. And then I've got to go because I haven't eaten dinner yet. Anti-American Video University. It was like CBC. Man, I just butchered that. My keyboard's brutal. Maybe I can't find it. I've showed it in another video. I'll bring it up in another video, but it's from like literally 2008. And the Canadians in the video are talking about like how much better Canadians are than Americans. And I'm just like, guys, grow up, you know? I'm glad to hear that, John. Thank you. Awesome. All right, guys, I am going to pop off. But once again, I just wanted to say that China's trying to steal our pipeline. But anyways, I just want to say, everybody, thank you who tuned in for the stream, who stuck around. So many of you guys stuck around for almost the entire thing. You're here from the beginning. So shout out to you. So Cedric, it says you're saying I need more popularity in my own country, and I do have a lot of Canadian viewers, but the problem is the way I deliver things, a lot of people don't like the Canadian sensibilities. They can't handle it unless they're based. So if you see any of my Canadian followers who comment, just know that they're probably pretty cool, or at the very least, generally based. So awesome. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. And we should maybe start making these streams monthly or something so we can talk and hang out more. I know, eh? Okay. Talk to you guys later. Oh, yeah. If you made it this far in the stream, you actually absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're trying to grow this video. We're trying to get in front of more people. We're trying to grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can absolutely you can do it through YouTube, through the link. Anyways, I messed that up because I just wanted to say thank you and have a great